Okay, let's dive in. Today, we're trying to tackle something that sounds, well, almost impossible.
Right.
How do you even start estimating a massive number, like, say, the total number of smartphones sold every year in India?
Yeah, it feels enormous, doesn't it? Like counting grains of sand. But we've got this analysis here from the sources you mentioned that gives us one way someone might approach it.
Exactly. It's less about one perfect number, more about the method.
Precisely. It's about building a logical model.
So our mission here is to unpack their approach, look at the numbers they use, the assumptions they make, and just see how they build up to that final estimate.
It's actually a pretty fascinating look at the process itself, how you estimate these huge, complex figures when, perfect data just isn't there.
Right. So where do they begin?
Well, they start with the biggest known number,
Hmm.
India's total population. They use 1,200 million people as their baseline. That's the foundation.
Okay, 1.2 billion. Then what? They must filter that down somehow.
They do. The first big filter is about who's likely even in the market. So they assume 70% of the population is above the poverty line.
Ah, okay. So that brings the potential market down to, what, around 840 million?
Exactly. Then they add another layer,
Mm.
age. They make an assumption, estimating roughly 30% are under 14.
And likely not the main mobile buyers.
Correct. So
Yeah.
that gets them to a sort of proxy figure of 588 million potential adult users above that poverty line.
Wow. Okay. So we've gone from 1.2 billion down to under 600 million already, just based on those two, well, quite significant filters.
Yeah, it really shows how you start broad and then narrow it down. Now, this is where it gets interesting because they split that 588 million
How so?
geographically. Rural versus urban. They use a 70% rural, 30% urban split based on that 588 million.
Okay. So roughly 410 million rural, 176 million urban.
hmm And what's fascinating is how their method for estimating phone numbers then changes quite a bit between those two groups.
All right. Let's take rural first. How do they handle that 410 million?
Well, here, they switch from individuals to households. They estimate about 82 million rural households.
Okay.
And then they assume a mobile penetration rate, basically. The number of active phones averaging 2 mobiles per household.
Two per household. So 82 million times two. That's 164 million total rural mobiles estimated to be in use.
Exactly. And now comes a really crucial assumption, the replacement cycle.
Mm.
How often do people buy a new phone?
Right. What do they assume for rural areas?
They estimate people buy a new mobile, on average, once every 3 years.
Okay, a 3-year cycle.
So you take that 164 million total, divide by 3, and they estimate around 55 million new rural mobiles are bought each year.
55 million. Okay, got it. Now, what about the urban side? That was 176 million people.
Yeah, and here they switch back to individuals, not households. They assume an average of 1.5 mobiles per person.
1.5 per person. So that's actually a higher total number of phones, right? 176 million times 1.5.
Hmm.
265 million urban mobiles.
Correct. A higher total. And maybe reflecting faster tech turnover, they assume a shorter replacement cycle.
How?
Once every 1.5 years. Much quicker than the rural estimate.
Okay, so divide 265 million by 1.5. Wow, that's 176 million new urban mobiles per year.
Big difference, isn't it? 55 million new ones in rural, 176 million in urban.
Yeah, massive.
Yeah.
So if you add those up, 55 plus 176, that's 231 million total new mobile phones bought across India each year, according to this analysis.
But wait, there's one more step. Because the original question was about smartphones.
Ah, right. Not just any mobile phone. So how many of that 231 million are smartphones?
This is where the model makes its final, pretty big assumption. They estimate that only 3 out of every 10 new mobiles sold are smartphones. So 30%.
Only 30%. Okay. So applying that 30% to the 231 million total, you get their final estimate, 70 million smartphones sold annually.
70 million, yeah. It's quite a journey, isn't it? From that huge 1.2 billion population figure down through all those layers.
Demographic filters, geographic splits, penetration rates, replacement cycles.
Right. All these assumptions pile up to get you from that massive starting point to a much more specific targeted estimate.
It really highlights how these market sizing exercises work. They're built layer by layer, assumption by assumption.
From 1.2 billion people down to an estimated 70 million smartphones sold per year. That's a common approach.
Yeah.
Start big, filter down, rely on the best data, and, well, educated guesses you have.
It's a powerful way to get a handle on numbers that are just, impossible to count one by one in the real world.
Definitely.
So think about this whole process we just walked through. You've seen all the steps, all the assumptions this analysis made. That poverty line filter, the age cutoff, the different penetration rates for rural and urban, those different replacement cycles, and that final 30% smartphone ratio.
Lots of assumptions.
Which single one of those assumptions do you think could most dramatically swing that final 70 million number if it was just slightly off? Something to chew on.